Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're learning Masechta Shavuot daf Lamed Daled. We're going to review on Lamed Gimel Amud Beis all the way back from the Mishnah, as this Mishnah and the Gemara really continues on to the next daf. So let's review the Mishnah. Mashmi'ani aleichem. When a person says, "I know that you know testimony regarding a certain thing," now all these different things are not going to be kfiras mamoin. These are not monetary claims that you're denying. And therefore, because of that, we're going to see that you're going to be potter. We'll see that again in a moment. If you don't come and testify, Shani Kohen, Shani Levi, I'm a Kohen, I'm a Levi. I know you know that. I want you to testify. And the guy says, no, I don't know. Then eventually, after the kfira, he ends up admitting to it, so he's going to be potter. Or she'eni ben grusha, she'eni chutz, I'm not a cholol, she'ish ploni Kohen, she'ish ploni Levi, that this other guy's a Kohen or Levi. You know testimony, she'enu ben grusha, she'enu ben chutza, that he's not a cholol. Or, for that matter, these are also cases which are not cases of kfiras mamoin. She'anos ish ploni es bito, that you know that this man was ma'anes, this man's daughter, mafata's bitoi, or was mafata his daughter. V'shachavel bi b'ni, that my kid hit me. V'shachavel bi chaverai, my friend hit me. Shehidlik kadishi b'shabes, or he burnt up a silo or a field on Shabbos. Hari elu paturin. In all these cases, you're going to be potter. Says Rashi. Why potter? To be inon sheyishmu mapi hatoiveya. V'itzrach lamisni mishum demukmi'inan lo baba b'harsha. A harsha is like a permission, a star saying that he's my shliach to get you to testify. So it's still going to be potter. I feel hachi inu bal dinoi bezu kashar mamoin. Okay. Anyway, so in all these situations, you're going to be potter, and even when it comes to burning up a field, and the reason why is because you're already chayav misa, and therefore because of that, there's a concept of kumlin b'Rabbi mina. Okay, so taima the ish poini koin the ish poini levi. The only reason why you'd be potter is because these are non-monetary claims. Hamanul poini biad poini chayavin. However, if you would say that this person has money in someone else's hand, you would be chayiv. But we see that it has to be actually heard from the person who's making the claim. So it still shouldn't work. So that's the question. Okay, now doesn't say that in this Mishnah, but that's what we're going to see. So So again, when we're talking about a harsha, which is this a star saying that he's my shliach, to get you to testify. So the chiddush is that even though he has a star saying he's my shliach, and you're doing that in order to get him to testify, he's still going to be potter, even in that situation. I thought we don't write this on a harsha on mataltal, and says Rashi Lafi Sheinu be'en, because it's not here. Because if it's a metaltal, it can be used up. The Edom Eden al Mashakasav Machma Sheish Biad Ploini Kach Lakach, so it looks like sheker. So Hanimil Hecha the Kafri, that's only when they deny it. But if he's not going to deny it, then we will write a harsha. Says Rashi Shekvar Nishma Shahanitva Kafrin Dahashna Mixik Shikra. Okay. Tell about Menayin Shein. This is why I want to review this. Menayin Shein Hakas Medaber El Betvias Mamoin. By Shavuos Edis, only with a claim of money. Why? So Rabbi Lezer Omer Nemerkan Oyin Benemerlhen Oyin. So there's numerous times it says O. For example, Rashi says O Ra, O Yada. So it says it multiple times. So Malaholon Enabadaber El Betvias Mamoin, just like when it comes to Shavuos Pikadain, that someone has an object by this person and you say, I don't know about it. So that's obviously apikadain is something which has monetary value, or b'shumas yad, or b'gezel, or eshek. These are all things which have connection to something of monetary value. So Avkan in Madam El B'Tvias Mammon. So when it comes to Shavuos Edus, it's the same thing. Oyin du Retzeach Yochicho. So we say 1 second. When it comes to Retzeach, it also says that. It says O Be'evahi Kaho Yishlech Lav Asada. It says numerous times when it comes to a murderer. So when it comes to Retzeach, Shehein Oyin Madabrim B'Lo Shlo B'Tvias Mammon. You can kill someone and you doesn't mean you're chayet. There's no monetary value connection to it. So how do we make that connection to just because Shavuos B'Kadain is money, but there's other cases where it has numerous times where it's not. So done an oyin sheish mehen shua, oyin sheish mehen shua, ya yochicha oyin doratzech sheini mehen shua. There's obviously a huge difference, but both Shavuos B'Kadain and Shavuos Edus, they both talk about Shavuos. They are Masechta. So it makes sense that we should connect the two, but not a Retzeach has nothing to do with it. So Oyin desaita echicho shehein Oyin. It has numerous O's also when it comes to a sota. Yeshim hen shua, and a woman does make a shua by a sota. And it's not talking about money. It has to do with potentially having them killed. So done an oyin sheishim hen shua vein imahen kayin me oyin sheishim hen shua vein imahen kayin. So we're going to compare when it comes to Shavuos B'Kadain and Shavuos Edus. They have similarities in two ways. First of all, the Shavuos, true, just like a sota, but a sota requires a kayin. This doesn't require a kayin. So therefore, that's the answer. So Rabbi Kiva comes up with a different answer. Since the pasuk says that when a person sins me'ela, which means only some of the claims, me'ela, there's sometimes you're going to be chayiv. Yesh me'ela shu chayiv, yesh me'ela shu pater. Haketzad. So how do we thread that needle? Tavoy mamin chayiv. Davar acher pater. If it's money, then you'll be chayiv by Shavuos Edus, but not when it comes to something which is non-tvias mum, like koyin chol. So Rabbi Yosef Glili Yomer, that's another answer. Rabbi Yosef Glili Yomer, Harihu Yomer, the pasuk says, who aid o ra o yada be'edus hamiskayemes. Says Rashi, ve'enocha edus bezu below zu. There's no testimony this without this. Elo b'tvias mammon, unless we're dealing with tvias mammon, unless we're talking about money. In other words, the only way that we could possibly read this pasuk is only in this scenario where we're talking about tvias mammon. So how does that? That each one could happen without the other. So b'riya b'lo yadia v'yadia b'lo riya, which means it's possible because it says the witness either saw or knew, which means you could see without knowing and you could know without seeing. So riya b'lo yadia ketzad, how's that possible? How could you see something without knowing? So even though you may know information, like you see money being handed over to another person, but you don't know what that is. It's possible it was given as a matana, for example. So because of that, even though you know it was given over, but you don't know, you saw it was given over, but you don't know that this person really has a proper claim to that money. Maybe it was given to him and that's it. How's it possible? Again, only when it comes to money, when you know something you don't see. So mana hodisali b'pnei the guy admitted that he owed the guy money. Now I never saw that the transaction, but I heard him admit to it. So there's yediyah without that he owes, so that's yediyah without riyah. So that's only when it comes to money, but you can't possibly paint that picture in any other way. This is question 3. Again, riyah is you saw the money exchanged, but you don't know the context of what that was about. And yediyah is you know that the person admitted to it, but you didn't actually see it, the money's exchanged. But again, all these cases of Shvus Ha'edus is only between us moment. Okay. Rav Shimon Omer, Chayiv Kan v'Chayiv b'Bikadain. You're Chayiv over here by Shvus Ha'edus, and you're Chayiv by Shvus B'Kadain. Mal enem medaber el b'tvias moment. Avkan enem medaber el b'tvias moment. Okay. So no one's arguing. We're just all giving different proofs. When it comes to a case of pikadon, shiasaba nashim kan nashim, we're much more. The din of pikadon takes place is more generic. It applies to more. For example, there can be a chiyuv for women when it comes to shulas pikadon, kroivim, kurachaykim, even if you're related, psum, keksherim. So all these people are going to be chayiv. V'chayiv al koil achas v'achas. You're chayiv on each one. Bifnei Beis Din, shlo bifnei Beis Din. It doesn't matter where it was done. If you make a shua in Beis Din or not. And medaber el b'tvias mamon. But nonetheless, when it comes to the case of shuas a pikadain, because it's a pikadain, obviously you're talking about money. So edus shulos about nashim kan nashim, where it's more restrictive, that it only applies to men. Kroivim kurachaykim only applies to rachaykim. Psum keksherim, only someone who's kashal edus, not apostle. There's only chayiv someone. You only chayiv once in Beis Din, because once we said before, so so therefore that's a proof. And also when it comes to a shus, we don't make the mushba kinishba or mezid kishaygeg. In other words, you're going to be potter. Terme be'eda shechein asaba mushba kinishba or mezid kishaygeg. You're going to be chayiv more. So there's more. It's more. Again, more. There's more laws attached to being when you can be chayiv. Talmud learner techata techno gzer shava. Never kan techat v'nemahon techata malin enamadaber el tvias mamon avkan enamadaber el tvias mamon. So through gzer shava, you can again learn this out. Okay. So maskav Rabbi Barula. Oh, bitoy yochichu. When it comes to Shavuos bitoy, the pasuk says oy nefesh kisishba lavati lahar lahetiv. So it says a couple of times there too by Shavuos bitoy. Shehain o oyin. There's a lot of O's, right? V'yeshu mehen shua, just like shuas bikadon, like shuas edus, shuas bito is shua. V'enim mehen kayin. There's no kayin. Medarbrim shlo b'tvias mamon. However, when it comes to shuas bito, you can be chayiv even if it has nothing to do with money. You say, I'm going to eat, I'm not going to eat, right? So maybe we should learn out shuas edus from Shavuos Bitoy, and therefore by doing that, the din would still be chayiv even without Tvias Moment, unlike our Mishnah. Now, Mistabra Mipikadon Havilo Meil. It makes more sense to learn Shavuos Eidos from Shavuos Bikadon. Shechein Techata Metechata, because we have this Gzer Shava. So Adarabba Mebido Havilo Meil Shechein Chatas Machatas, right? So either it's a Gzer Shava, or it says it again, that's one answer. Or Chatas Machatas, says Rashi, Eidos Ubitoi, the Chatas of Shavuos Bikadon Ba'osham. There are different karbanos. When it comes to Shavuos Eidos, when it comes to Shavuos Bitoy, you have to bring a karban Chatos. When it comes to Shavuos Bikadon, the karban is an Osham. So it's not the same thing. So maybe we shouldn't learn out to from Shavuos Bikadon. Shavuos Bikadon, the Chiv is an Osham, not a Chatos. El Mastabra Mibikon Havlo Meil, if Shechein Chata B'mezid. When it comes to Shavuos Bikadon, a person can sin B'mezid. Shechein Chata. So let's go through each one. Chata Simanhu Shechein Chata Techata. Again, there's this Gzer Shav, if you will, and B'mezid. You're chayiv on mezid, but when it comes to Shavuos Bitoy, it says Venelam. It's only b'shaygeg. Tvia v'kafrei, he denies the claim. Says Rashi, Eidos b'kadon boyin al de taina. There's a claim, the kvira, and they deny it. Mashiin came to Shavuos Bitoy. V'avrei and the Eidos took place in the past. Eidos ubikadan shtein hashvuos l'sha'avar avobitoi ikul haba. It's in the future. Now, of course, not everyone holds that. Is a machlokus whether or not Shavuos Bito is dafka in the future tense, not in the past tense. Okay, so Adarabba Mebita Havul Me'ev Shechein Chatas, as we said, it's a carbon chatas as opposed to Shavuos, as opposed to when it comes to Shavuos. There's a chi of chatas as opposed to learning out from Shavuos Bikadain, in which is a chi of asham, carbon asham. So not only that, shiarda, there's a din of carbon oil v'yarid. Carbon oil v'yarid is only applicable to Shavuos, which is applicable to Shavuos Bito, which of course we'll be learning, but it's also applicable to Shavuos Ha'edos, but not by Shavuos Bikadain, because again, Shavuos Bikadain, an oil of yarid is only by a chatas, but not by an asham. And also a chaimish. What does that mean, chaimish? Says Rashi. Let's look at this Rashi. Siman hu edus ubitu shnei b'chatas uva oil v'yared v'ein behen chaimish. There's no din chaimish. Lafuki pikadayin u'shuvas pikadayin shuba asham uva carbon kavua. Right, it's a carbon kavua. That's not an oil v'yared. When it comes to a carbon asham, you also have to add a fifth, in addition to the principle. Okay, that's true, but hanach nefishin. There's more similarities between a Shavuos Eidos to Shavuos Bikadain than Shavuos Bitoy. Okay. Rabbi Kiva says, "V'haya ki yasham achas me'ela." So he learns out from the me'ela, as we saw. Really, yesterday's not. We reviewed it. That only some claims there's a chiyuv. Yeshim eila shu chayiv, yeshim eila shu pater. Haketzit tavu maman chayiv tavu davrachar pater. So again, we don't really. How does he know that is the way to distinguish it? But we clearly see from me'ela that there's sometimes you're chayiv and sometimes you're not when it comes to Shavuos Eidos. Ibachana, Rabbi Akiva, oyin Rabbi Akiva samach. So ibachana. The question is, how does Rabbi Akiva know which one you're chayiv? Maybe it's pumfakert. Maybe you're chayiv on when there's no tvias moment. You're pater when there is tvias moment. So Rabbi Kiva, oin Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Lezer samach. So it's true, that would be true, but he's actually relying also on the other opinions, which show it's dakat tvias moment. So my binayu. So if that's the truth, so then what's the difference? Like, what is Rabbi Kiva adding? It's really the same thing, and he relies on the other opinion. So my benayu ben Rabbi Lezer ben Rabbi Kiva. So benayu mashpia edi karka when it comes to making a shua on land. So Rabbi Lezer chayav and Rabbi Kiva peturin. Now why? Says Rashi. Says Rashi my benayu. They both say, by Tvias Mammon, you're going to be chayiv. So Rabbi Lezer chayavin when it comes to Gabi Hashavas Gazela, returning something which is stolen. Shamin Leila Kaman de Machayev Hashava al Gazel's Karka. You have to return, if something was stolen, you have to return it, right? So the same thing is when it comes to, just like if you stole land, you have to return the land. So too, when it comes to Shavuos Eidos, maybe the machlokas is whether you're going to be chayiv on Shavuos Eidos on land. Mashbeh Edi Karka, Rabbi Lezer chayiv and Rabbi Kiva peturin. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan the Emer Hasa Mashbeh Edi Karka, afil Rabbi Lezer peturin. So hacha ma'ika ben Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Kiva ikamenayu Edi Knas. Says Rashi. Rabbi Lezer chayavin. Rabbi Lezer will say you're chayiv. L'chein b'shvuos apikadain. The shami'inan lei the darish parsha shvuos b'kadain b'riboy miyute. Because it went out from a riboy and a miyut. Okay. So therefore, because of that, he's going to be mechayiv. He's going to be more inclusive to mechayiv more things. And Rabbi Akiva, as He learns out not from there. Okay. Rav Yosef Guli Omer Who Aid O Ra O Yada Be'edus Hamas Kayemes. It's something which could exist on its own. B'Re'iyah B'lo Yediyah B'Yediyah B'lo Re'iyah Kasam Adaber. It has to be that, and it can only be with money. Amar Papa Labaya Leim Rav Yosef Glila Leislei Rav Acha. The Rav Acha, maybe he disagrees with the statement of Rav Acha that what? The Tana, the Sanya. Rav Acha Eimer Gamal Ha-Oicher Ben Ha-Gamolim. Let's say you have a Gamal which is mating among other camels and it's kicking, says Rashi, also Rashi, Leislid Rav Acha the doyin machayev b'dedami. He's machayev even when there's things that are apparent. Ha'ucher boyet baraglav. You see a camel that's going crazy and kicking others all around it. V'nimsa gamal hoyrig b'tzidai, and you see a camel's dead on the side. B'yadush is a hargo. Probably that was the one that killed. Now, but the dami is like circumstantial evidence that you're chayev according to him, even though you didn't actually see it. Okay, so the islay Rav Acha b'din nefashos nami mishkachas law, because we also find this that he does use circumstantial evidence, and also din nefashos nami mishkachas law. We also find it come to capital cases, Rav Shimon ben Shatach, the son of Rav Shimon ben Shatach, Ero ben Achama. Now, of course, this we're going to end up seeing this is not entirely correct what he did, but he said, "I'll see much comfort that I see some guy running into a dilapidated building. There's probably no one else there. And someone else is running after him. And the guy has this big machete over his head. V'dam metaftef, there's blood dripping. V'haroig mefarfer, and now I see the dead body, the guy shaking, and this other guy holding a bloody knife. But I didn't actually see the actual Misa of the stabbing. Amarti lo Russia, I would say to this guy, you're wicked. Mi hargulazeh. Who killed him? Was it you or Oanioata? Was it I or was it you? Well, there's only two people here, and I, first of all, I'm a big tzaddik. In addition to me being a big tzaddik, you have one thing that I don't have, a big knife with blood all over it. So it's pretty apparent through the dummy, through circumstantial evidence, that you're the one that did the killing of a ma'aseh. Shein damcha maser biyadi. Your blood is not given over to my hands. Shahari amr taira al pi shnaim edim or shlosh edim yumas hameis. The truth is, in order to be chayim misa b'di adam, you need 2 or 3 witnesses. However, you should be sure el hamakim yifra mimcha. Hashem will give you what you deserve. So amru, they said lozos misham chenishko nachash hameis. That immediately a snake came and killed this guy. So what do we see? That when it comes to looking at circumstantial evidence, that we see that this taka took place, right? He knew, right? It says Rashi, Hakanami biyadush is hargo. He knew that he was the one that killed him. Okay, so afil tema islay Rav Acha. So again, the question is, we find Yediyah Yediyah possibly even without Tevias moment, by the case of circumstantial evidence. So I can understand that you may know without seeing it. You didn't actually see what happened, but it's pretty obvious that if there's a camel that's going crazy and kicking and killing, going all over the place, all the other camels are tame, and then 5 seconds later you see a dead camel, it was probably that camel that did it. So, how is it possible that you saw something we didn't know? Right? Milu boy miida im av kachavim harag o Yisrael harag im adam treifa harag o shalom harag. So he said, isn't it necessary? Milo boy Meda, shouldn't he know if who was that was killed? Was it a Chaver Yisrael? Was it a Treifa, or was it a Sholem? Okay, so basically, we're saying that it's possible that you can have Re'iyah, but you're not going to have Yediyah. But it's possible you can't have Re'iyah without Yediyah, because otherwise they're not going to be Chayiv. Says Rashi, Im Ra Shaharg Adam ve'eni yodeh mi havi ha'hayreg. Let's say you saw the killer, but you didn't know who he was. Mi matzi masid aleha. Can you testify? Mi lo boy lemedak. Don't you have to be more particular? In other words, if you saw but you didn't know anything about who this guy was, then it doesn't work. Okay. Shema minak savu Rav Yosef Glili mashmiya edi kanas potter. So it must be, according to Rav Yosef Glili, and Rashi says this is a milsa b'yapi nafshehi. This is separate. Medikayim Rav Yosef Glili in Shavuos edus el be'edus hamas kayemes b'yadibel re'iyah v're'iyah b'yadiyah shema min Israeli mashmiya edi kanas de'oinus mafate b'kafar peturin. It must be when it comes to edi kanas of oinus mafate, which there is a kanas that you have to pay, that you're going to be potter. Rabbi Yosef Glili will hold that if you withhold such testimony and then admit to that fact that you knew, so you're going to be potter and carbon of yard in that case. If taki you are chayiv, I understand knowing what happened but not seeing what happened. Ashkachan law, re'ibul yadia milu boy meida. When it comes to seeing without knowing, obviously you need to know what's going on, and therefore, in that case, you be potter. Nachris boil bas Yisrael bal basulo bal bu'u. I'm going to read this. Nachris boil bas Yisrael boil basulo boil bu'ula boil. So again, you have to know the context of who these people are, or else you're not going to be chayiv. Your testimony is not going to mean anything. Okay. Yosef Rab Hamnuna Kameda Rab Yehuda Yosef Rab Yehuda become a boile mana minischa mimni pliny. There was money that was being counted in front of a guy. Pliny, right in front. There was testimony. Clearly, this was going on. As we continue to Lamedal Mebez Eidim Royin Isai Mibachutz. And there are witnesses that noticed this from the outside. Rashi says, "V'hikar hanitva mehem." The borrower didn't see the witnesses. The borrower didn't know the witnesses were there. What's the din? Armalei Rab Hamnuna v'hala matayin. I don't understand what's the claim. If the guy's saying lahadam that I never got the money, so hooks a kafir. The guy's a liar because we have witnesses that actually saw it, even though the nitva, the borrower, didn't know there was Adam. He was obviously lying. Says Rashi, you can't say lahadam anymore. We're not believed because you can't say I don't even know who you are, because we know that you collected. We don't know what you collected it for. It could have been money that you were owed. It could have been a matana. But the point is that it's clear that you're lying. So, in shaka de shakli, what if he says, yes, I did take, but I took which was mine, so that he also ate him my havi. So when the Adam come, what is the din? Because the truth is, the Adam have re'iyah, but they don't have yediyah. So Malay hamnuna at oil ta. You come into the base medrash. So what does that mean? It says Rashi, ata you ra'ul lechanis beis hamedrash. You can come into the base medrash shi'ata machim es rabcha, because you have made your teachers wise by posing such a question. But it doesn't seem like they really answer the question. Person says that there was money that was given over to this other guy, and it was at this particular pillar. I never passed by this pillar, so I don't know what you're talking about. Also traits Sahadi. Then two witnesses come. Asihidu Bay. Dehishtin Mayim Besad Omadzeh. And there's people say, I actually saw this guy by the pillar. I didn't actually see the money necessarily exchanged, but I know this guy, he was urinating or doing something by this pole. So for him to say that he was never by this pole is not true. So this is considered to be a liar because he didn't say lahadam, but he's basically said I never was there, and we have witnesses to verify he was. So Maskav Rav Nachman, so Haidina Parsahu. This seems to be the judgment of the Persians. Mi kaimer ma'olam. Did he say forever that he was never there? Be'asik zeh karmeleh. He says that I had no business dealings by this pole. So the fact is, he's not saying that I never was by this Almud. He was just saying that I never was there for business. They were by this pillar. So I was never there. He had the word me'olam. So nafki b'sahadi dehishtin mayim b'sad omanzeh. Rav Nachman hooks a kafir. Amalei Rabba Rav Nachman kol milsa the loy ramalei the inish oven lei v'lavadaite. So if it's something which is not really in a person's mind, because it's so insignificant, where like a person goes to the bathroom, then I can remember. So therefore, it's not that person that hooks the kafir. It says Rashi, ki hacha she'eno adam lasum el libo kol mekayma shehu mashdim shomayim liyuzacha lein. That person doesn't remember such insignificant things in their life, and therefore that would not make you a hooks the kafir, because it's possible that he made a mistake. Question 4. Asu trace hadia sebed hishin mai besad manzeh. So either he didn't say the word ma'olam, he said he didn't say ma'olam, I was never there. He just said for business I wasn't there. Or kol milsil had the inish of daite. Okay, let's look at question TA28. So he's looking, actually, for some reason, he said, so the question actually says ma'olam, so this is lamadal mebez. So he only need the second answer, TA28, of kol milsa doloi ramulad inish. Okay, that's TA28. Fine. TB 29, exactly the same question, and it says ma'olam. TB 29. Okay, right. Says the Gemara. Rav Shimon Omer chayiv kan v'chayiv b'bikadin. So again, everyone holds, apparently, based on our Mishnah, that the only time you're going to be chayiv by Shavuos Eidos is dafka in a situation if we're dealing with tfias moment, monetary claims. So machla b'merava. So they laughed in Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi had Rav Shimon the Gemara b'bikadin b'gzer shavah b'chadchet. So they laughed at this. My chucha. Well, what exactly is this laugh? The Ketani Mali because of Mishchein Lo Asaba Musha Kanishma Mezik Shayge. So Michdi Mushba Mepi Atzmo Be'edus Rav Shimon Nole. So how does he know when it comes to Shavuos Eidos, according to the Shita of Rav Shimon, that there's such a din? So the Gomer Bikadei. So he learns out Shavuos Eidos from Shavuos Bikadei. So Bikadei Nami Mushma Mepi Acherem Nigmar. Even someone else can make you make an oath. Nigmar Me'edus. So my chucha Dilma Rav Shimon Mekavachaymer Ma'isilo Mepi Acherem Chayim Mepi Atzmo Lo Kol Shekain. No, not from Mekavachaymer. That when it comes to Mepi Acherem Yechayev, so your own testimony certainly should be chayev. Chocha Mezik Shayge. Tani Malo Bikadei Shekain Lo Asabai Mushma Kanishma Mezik Shayge. Michti. Mezid Gabi Eidos, when it comes to testimony, Manole Deluk Sibi Vanelam, Hachanami Deluk Sibi Vanelam. So it should also apply to Mezid because it doesn't say the word Vanelam. So we mentioned when it comes to Shavuos Bitoy, we know it has to be Vanelam, it has to be B'Shaygeg. But over here, Since it doesn't say v'nelam, so it should apply to mezid. So Rav Huna, my chucha dilma mezid the lav k'shayg b'bikadayin mezid, which is not like a shayg when it comes to shulas bikadayin mi'ila. We learn out from mi'ila because mi'ila is only if it happens b'shayging. So Rav Shimon Gamala, so maybe he learns out from there. So v'hanu chucha ad gaimerla mi'ila nigmala me'edus. So why do you have to learn out from mi'ila to say that you're chayiv? You should learn out. To learn this out, you should learn from Eidos to be chayiv. So Mastabra Me'ila have a lameo shechein Me'ila Me'ila. Now let's stop for a second. Let's go into Rashi. So Nigmer Me'edus l'chayuva b'gzer shava shechein Me'ila b'chol nena b'kvua chayim. Okay, we didn't do that yet. So Adarabba Me'edus have a lameo shechein techata metechata. It makes more sense to learn out from Shuas to Eidos because you have this gzer shava. So Mistabra Me'ila Havul Amer Shachain. How do we see? Because when it comes to Me'ila Shachain Me'ila, there's this din B'Shneim Shnemar Me'ila. By both of them it says Me'ila. B'Shneim Nohag. Let's look at this whole Rashi. B'Shneim Nohagin B'Choil. It applies to everyone. Avul Eidos, when it comes to Shua Eidos, in a Noig Ela Boruyin Lahayid. Right. So maybe you can't learn out from Shua Eidos, but rather you learn out from Me'ila. Furthermore, V'shnehem nehenu ba'avera shibiyadam. Both of them got hana. Zen nehena min a hektish. One got hana from hektish. V'zeh kafar mamoin. And the other one denied money, which is a form of hana. Lafuki edus. She was becoming. However, when it comes to Shuas edus, lo nehena, not getting in hana by just not testifying. V'shnehem b'karbon kavua. Both of them, there's a carbon kavua, as opposed the aid, right? But kavua, they both have a carbon kavua. There's no carbon oil of a yarid, like my case of Shuas bitoy. Chaimish says the eidos but oil of a yarid. When it comes to carbon oil of Shuas eidos, it's oil of a yarid. However, me'ila is a carbon kavua. The shnei b'chaimish v'ashem v'eidos b'chatas v'ein shom chaimish. Okay. So when it comes to the other two, Me'ila is then Chaimish and Osham. By Eidos, it's a carbon Chatos, it's also an oil of Yared, and there's no din Chaimish. So there's all these distinctions that it makes more sense to learn out from Me'ila than to learn out from Shuas Eidos. So Adarab, Eidos have a little of Shechin Chatam Hedyet, B'Shvua, Tevia, V'Kafre, V'Oin. So we got to look at these Rashis. B'Shneim Nemar Techada. Both of them it says no techta. V'dinoi im hahedjit, and the din is with a hedjit. Although mi'ila dinu im hektish, has to do with hektish. Shneim b'shvua, both of them have to do with shvua. Ve'alidi tviya v'kfira, hein boyin. Shneim nemer oyin, as we saw at the beginning, mashin kain b'mi'ila. It doesn't mention oyin when it comes to mi'ila. So that's true. B'hanach nefishin. When it comes to Me'ila, there's more similarities. El mai chucha. So what was this whole giggle? So Kiyos Rav Papa Rav Huna buried Rav Yeshua Mebei Rav Amri Hainu chucha. This is the laugh. Michti Rav Shimon Gzer Shavgamer. Rav Shimon learns out this Gzer Shava, comparing Shuos Bikadin, Shuos Eidos, Lamule the Parich Malak Bikadin Shechein Lo Asabo Mushbakim Nishba Mesik Shaygig. Dilma ki parach mekmei to take him like Gzer Shava. Maybe it was before the Gzer Shava. Basta the couple like Gzer Shava like parach. So maybe it was the other way around. Says Rashi, B'tchilos mishnasenu sh'shoybo lamdo b'binyanav the chayiv kan v'chayiv b'bikadayin of Basta the couple like Gzer Shava the chedched l'shamin le the pircha. At that point, you can't ask a pircha because you can have a pircha on a Mamatzinu or Binyanav, but not on a Gzer Shava. V'loi v'yimer lahu Rabba bar Isa Rabban and Mantana Shuas Bikadain lo nitain zedaina lekapara. They're not going to be chayiv or Shimoni. So you're not chayiv by zadain. So Dilma Meisik Shayig Parach. The Garmula Mimi'ila, the Hanach Nefishin of a Mushman Kanishma Loy Parach. V'tahadar Eidos v'tigmar lo mibikadain. Mezid the lav k'shayig, ma bikadain shayig af mezid in mezid loy af Eidos shayig in mezid loy. So when it comes to Shavuos Edus, only b'shaygeg, but not be'ezid. Kehechid yom b'kadam v'mi'ila. So maybe when it comes to Shavuos b'kadayin, we say that you're only chayiv b'shaygeg, not b'mezid. When it comes to Shavuos Edus, you're only chayiv b'shaygeg, not b'mezid. So the answer is L'haki kasar rachman edus gabi Shavuos bitoy, the gabi tumas mikdash v'kadashav, the kul never behen v'nelam, which of course is only b'shaygeg, but the kan will never behen v'nelam. L'chayv al mezid k'shaygeg. So the point is, no. The fact is, we compare it to, on some level, to Shavuos Bitoy, that by Shavuos Bitoy it says Venelam, so it's Dafki B'Shoig Ben Apamezid. So therefore, because it says Venelam, that's the reason why you're Chayiv only B'Shoig Ben Apamezid, but that's by Shavuos Bitoy. Now when it comes to Shavuos Eidos, which you're going to be Chayiv, also B'Mezid. Okay, we'll stop there. Let's see maybe another question. Adkan.